Wow. If you want to see organized chaos, the check-in and boarding process for Norwegian at their New Orleans port is it. Let's just say I was not impressed. Ahoy travelers, it's Amy with Cruising from the Ozarks here with another Tuesday tip to help you make your vacation a success. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up. Only takes a second, and doing so helps other cruisers find us. I haven't been on a lot of cruises, but this was the most stressful and disorganized process I have been through so far. Maybe calling it disorganized is not the right word for it. It's organized, but there seems to be a lack of information passed along to passengers. If you're planning on sailing out of Norwegian, out of the port of New Orleans, be sure to stay tuned as I walk you through what to expect. I'm one of those people who likes to be prepared. I research as much as possible so that I will know what to expect in new situations. I find it very stressful to go into a new situation not knowing what's going to happen. And if you're like me, you're going to want to be sure to check back for more videos on things that surprise us while sailing on Norwegian for the first time. As someone who does do quite a bit of research, I'm surprised at the lack of information by Norwegian on their embarkation process. I looked, I just really couldn't find a lot. Even online, I just never really found even videos from cruisers explaining the embarkation process. They'll do walkthrough videos of the ship, but nothing really about the port itself and that whole process at the terminal. So this is why we're doing this video. We walked to the terminal from the Riverwalk Mall next door to arrive just before our check-in time. It was easy to find, probably because we knew where it was after passing it twice while attempting to drop off our luggage and find the parking lot, or the entrance to the parking lot. If you missed that video, be sure to go back and check it out. Once inside the terminal, we quickly got into line to show our boarding passes. This went quickly and wasn't an issue. At that point, we were directed to another line where we would go through the metal detector. The next line was our actual check-in station. They checked our passports and gave us our freestyle cards. It was the next step in the boarding process that was confusing and annoying. After getting our freestyle cards, we were pointed in a general direction that ended up being a huge waiting room. Nobody explained anything to us. And up to this point, we had been hearing group numbers being called out, and it appeared that these were boarding groups. However, we weren't given a group number, and you could see people wandering around with these cards that had a number on it. But we weren't given one, and nothing was explained to us about how people were getting those numbers. Like, we were just supposed to know, I guess. We had to actually go and ask, and then we're told after they looked at our card that we were in general boarding. Since we were first-time cruisers with Norwegian and our cabin was just a basic interior, we didn't get a group number. If we were on the Titanic, we would have been in steerage and never made it off the ship. No lifeboats for us. Rose would have just watched us as we sunk into the cold waters. Like I said, I've not been on a lot of cruises prior to this one, but I have never been placed in a holding area prior to boarding. Now, I know they do exist because I've seen other cruisers mention it on their videos, but all of my previous cruises with Carnival, I've boarded directly after going through security and check-in. I mean, they had to wait in line, but I've never been directed to an area to sit and wait for an hour, over an hour. My question at this point is, why did I need to pick in a check-in time if I was going to have to sit and wait for general boarding for over an hour? I understand that they don't want everyone showing up at the terminal at the same time, but why even allow general boarding passengers to choose check-in times well before general boarding was going to occur? If general boarding isn't going to start until around 1 p.m., then don't let general boarding passengers book check-in times prior to 12:30 p.m. Our boarding time was 11:30 a.m. and I saw times available as early as 10:30 a.m. that I could have booked, but there was only one time available and I needed two of the same time. So I ended up booking 11:30, which meant I was waiting an hour and a half basically from the time we walked in the door until we were able to leave and actually get on the ship. I'm not sure if it's always this way at all Norwegian terminals, or even if it's this way at this terminal, or if this is possibly a holdover from the restart. I just don't know. However, I have never had to wait to board after checking in when sailing with Carnival. I spoke to a few people over the week that are regular Norwegian cruisers who also said that this was the worst check-in and boarding process that they experienced with Norwegian. So hopefully this is just specific to their New Orleans terminal, but I have my doubts. I mean, they had cards with numbers. That seems like something they probably use in more than one terminal. Maybe I missed the explanation for all of this on their website, but we were very confused, which just added unnecessary stress to our day, especially after the stress and confusion around the baggage drop-off and parking. I realize Port Authority workers are busy and trying to get everyone through the process as fast as possible, but for those of us who are doing this for the first time, there should be more information given. Even a few signs while standing in line that explain the process would have been helpful. Good grief, we were standing in line long enough to look around and read any informational signs out of boredom alone. It was very obvious when we got to the last group of the steerage passengers, general boarding group, that some of the people remaining had actually been through this process before. They were already lined up, card in hand, ready to rush the entrance. They knew exactly how many boarding groups were going in front of them, and they were ready. If memory serves, it was 32 groups. I think it's easy for people that do something every day, or every week in this case, to forget that there are people who are experiencing that thing for the first time. While about 30 to 40 general boarding guests were lined up ready to get through that final gauntlet, there were quite a few of the rest of us that were just still sitting in our seats and no clue that general boarding was going to be the next to be called. So while these people started lining up, the port employees that were there waiting to let people through started to address them, saying things like, "What are the rules? You guys know the rules, and hold your cards up, don't rush, single file," etc., etc. It just came off weird. It was like they were just talking to these people, and this was all before it was announced that general boarding passengers could board. For us, luckily, we had actually sat down in chairs right next to that roped off section where they were checking cards as they called off each group. So we heard all of this and were able to go ahead and grab our stuff and get through as they actually called general boarding over the loudspeakers. In fact, while everyone in front of us was using the right escalator, there were two sets of escalators that went from the terminal up to the ship deck. We actually jumped on the second set of escalators. Nobody was using them, and walked up the escalator while it was moving and managed to get in front of everyone else in steerage, general boarding. You'd think that all those people who seemed to have a heads up as to what was going on, because that's the people we were passing, would have realized they could have used both sets of escalators. It was just kind of funny. After that, it was just a line of people working their way through the port onto the gangway until we finally stepped onto the ship. For me, this was the first time that I had walked onto a ship and it wasn't walking into an atrium or a lobby area. The gangway for the breakaway led to deck 7 on an outer walkway and eventually into a lobby near stairs and elevators. It was a little disorienting because we weren't expecting that, and since this was the first time on the ship, we had no clue where we were going. Did we go right? Did we go left? What deck were we even on? While that can be either exciting or panic-inducing depending on how you deal with new situations, it really isn't unusual when boarding a new ship to just walk on and have no clue where you are and where you need to go. But if you're walking on, you're coming into the atrium area, which is where I am used to, it's a little less disorienting because at least you're in a large area and can kind of stop and take in your surroundings and make a decision versus just kind of walking into an elevator stairwell area. So it was a little disorienting, but it was fine. We managed it. Don't forget to check out part 1 of our embarkation here And please let me know in the comments if you have experienced something similar while boarding the Breakaway or any other Norwegian ship in New Orleans. If you're planning on sailing on the Breakaway out of New Orleans, did you find any of this helpful? Let me know and then come back for more videos on our recent cruise.